Hi, my name is Brooke Flathers. I am a graduate student at Morningside University, and I am a teacher at the Riverside School District here in Iowa. The study that I'm going to be discussing is titled The Impact of Self-Regulation Strategies on Student Writing Achievement in a Middle School Classroom. The problem that I identified was there is low writing achievement, which this statement can be supported by the National Center for Education Statistics, which explains that only 31% of students in the U.S. are proficient in writing by the time they're in 8th grade. The next sort of component to the problem that I identified was the lack of social-emotional development amongst middle school students, which is my primary area that I teach. I teach all of 7th and 8th grade. And so I kind of started researching those two things. And Heimovitz et al. In 2018 stated that low social-emotional development can lead to negative outcomes such as low academic achievement, bullying, delinquency, stress, dropping out, and other risky behaviors. The Center for Disease Control in 2019 also completed a survey with adolescents, and 36% of students had feelings of persistent hopelessness. 15.7% of adolescents had a suicide plan, and 8.8% had made a suicide attempt. So those statistics and some of the research that I had conducted on social emotional development pointed me to learn more about that the social emotional development among students is a very wide range of topics and dimensions and can be overwhelming for both students and teachers in education to address those areas. And without that social emotional development, students are going to struggle academically and personally. So I kind of looked next to one specific area within social emotional development, which is self-regulation. Daniela 2015 identifies self-regulation as a person's ability to process options in response to problems, stress, or tasks at hand, and maintain their focus and respond in a proper way. Winters et al. 2008 states that students lack self-regulation skills in terms of their ability to plan and implement strategies to help them be successful. So without these self-regulation strategies, students are going to struggle academically and in social situations or emotional areas as well. I chose this topic to research because as a teacher and a coach, I've noticed that the ability for students to self-regulate can impact them either positively or negatively depending on their development level in that dimension of social-emotional development. And so I wanted to explore a problem in education that hopefully would come up with some sort of solution or ways that would be beneficial for students in many different areas of their lives. So next, looking at the literature review, there are social emotional programs that have been researched and developed. Those have limitations. And then there's also current interventions available more broadly just in social emotional development and then specifically at the self-regulation dimension as well. So we'll talk a little bit about those. So Yeager and Beatty Campbell-Evans discussed that social emotional programs are underdeveloped specifically at the middle school level because most of our SEL programs are more effective at the elementary age level, and it doesn't properly motivate our middle school students. So that's one focus of this study, is taking this problem and looking at it at the middle school level to try and develop some solutions there. Malti and Noam discuss some assessment tools that are available to educators and students. It is based on student-reported information, and the assessment tools don't really provide next steps or what dimensions to focus on specifically there, because as previously mentioned, social emotional development is a much larger topic with several dimensions at play there. Social Harmony is a K-8 program that is a current intervention. It provides general instruction, group, and individual instruction for educators to provide for students. It has been shown to improve student-teacher relationships. However, only 10% within the studies that have been conducted on this program have follow-up beyond just the initial start-up of the program. So that is a limitation with the current intervention there. The Self-Regulation Empowerment Program is a program that focuses specifically on self-regulation, and it provides an assessment on the beliefs of self-regulation and strategies for teacher feedback to students. It does focus on self-regulation, however, it's very reliant on student participation and limited by various outside factors. So the proposed intervention that I have proposed here is self-regulation through goal setting and reflection. So specifically looking at the dimension of self-regulation, but then with the intervention strategies of goal setting and reflection to teach some of those things to students for them to implement to hopefully benefit them and their writing achievement. So goal setting and reflection and self-reflection are self-regulation strategies that benefit academic success and personal growth. That's according to Turkman 2021. Self-regulation allows for student ownership of their learning in ways that can produce buy-in to writing, according to Dembo and Eaton 2000. Students will be able to take pride and ownership in their writing through the process of goal setting and reflection. And according to Winners et al. 2008, self-regulation involves determining goals, planning strategies, implementing strategies, and self-reflection. So this intervention would meet some of those components to develop this self-regulation among students. The purpose of this study was to determine if self-regulation strategies of goal setting and reflection can be used to address social-emotional development needs in a way that impacts student writing. The hypothesis for this study was that self-regulation strategies will increase student achievement in writing through goal setting and reflection. The variables at play in this study, the independent variable in this study was the instruction of self-regulation strategies, so goal setting, action planning, and self-reflection. The dependent variable was the writing scores, so we're trying to see how these self-regulation strategies would impact the student writing achievement. The data that was collected during this was both quantitative and qualitative data. The quantitative data was the student writing scores that were taken at pre, mid, and post within the study, and the qualitative data was taken on student reflections, conversations with peers, and discussions with students and teachers. So, possible impact. The results of this study could be used to help students develop self-regulation strategies. The results could be used by educators to target specific areas of social-emotional development in a way that impacts student writing and their writing achievement. My work as a practitioner in this study will be how I address self-regulation in the classroom moving forward. So for this study specifically, the participants were a 7th grade language arts classroom. There were 26 students, 12 female, 14 male. There were 4 students with an IEP. 2 received no accommodations, 1 received additional time, and another received more frequent check-ins in their writing. I had no English language learners in the class, and of the 26 students, 24 were Caucasian and 2 were biracial. The administrative permission was given by my admins, and then parents and students were given consent forms to determine whether they would participate or not, and the data could be used. The materials used in this study, student reflection and goal setting sheets, student computers, we are a one-to-one school, essay prompts, 3 were given, again, pre, mid, and post. The ISAF 7th grade informative writing rubric was used to score all writing in this to hopefully create a more objective writing assessment. Excel spreadsheet was where I recorded all of the qualitative and quantitative data. And then students also used writing utensils on their goal and reflection sheets. The procedure, so students were given an essay prompt to establish a baseline. They received regular instruction for the following 2 weeks. There was a midpoint essay prompt that was given, and then regular instruction with the use of the goal setting and reflection forms for the next 2 weeks. At the conclusion of that point, post-assessment was given, so students were given a final writing prompt to respond to. Along the way, I gathered writing score data on the spreadsheet, listed observations, and student reflections. The data analysis I read through things several times, coded the data, read through it a few more times to establish patterns and themes that were common amongst the data, and then discovered some of those final messages and themes within the study. So the results, goal setting, the first conclusion that was made is that goal setting leads to a better sense of self-awareness. So students were more aware of their own behaviors, their effort into writing, things that got them off task, whether they were completing assignments. Students were able to pinpoint things that were helping them or hindering their achievement. Another prominent result from this study was that peer and personal distractions lead to off-task behavior. So students and the teacher, myself, were able to identify peer-to-peer distractions and personal distractions, and we talked about some self-regulation strategies that go with those, and students actually were setting goals on how to better stay on task. So it was really positive conversations from there. The data also proves that the average writing score went up from a 10.62 average to a 15.15 from the pre to post assessments. The pre-assessment scores included 6 students who received a 0 and only 1 student scoring a 20, which the score was out of 20. The midpoint assessment included 2 students who received a 1 and 2 students who scored a 20. The post-assessment scores did not have any students scoring a 0 and had 2 students scoring a 20. So from pre to post, the overall average of the class increased, as well as we were no longer seeing those zeros in the students' writing. So here you can see this figure that kind of just further displays that data for the means, and then here again you can see that minimum score of a 0 on the pre-assessment to a minimum score of a 10 on the post. So in conclusion, there are some implications, limitations, and recommendations that I have moving forward. So the findings from this study suggest that self-regulation strategies can increase student achievement in writing for students. This study fills the gap by targeting the middle school grades with a focus on the dimension of self-regulation. The study is important because it provides insight to the benefits of teaching students how to use self-regulation strategies in the classroom. And this study also helps to target the dim reality that a mere 31% of students are proficient in writing in the U.S. in 8th grade. With this in mind, again, this study does help to bridge some of those gaps between the effective programs at the middle school level. I would say a big limitation for this study is that the rubric is, like when you're grading writing, it's somewhat subjective. Using the same rubric across helps contain some of that objectivity, but I think a recommendation would be to first conduct maybe a panel of teachers grading the writing to limit more of that subjectivity. And then another potential limitation of this study would be the size. So it was just one class in a less diverse classroom. So I think a more in-depth study that would test this hypothesis at varying grade levels and in a variety of demographics would be beneficial to continue from here. So overall, this study suggests that self-regulation strategies can increase student writing for students. This study is important because it shows the potentially positive effects that teaching self-regulation strategies can have on student writing achievement and academic self-awareness. The limitations are subjectivity in grading writing and the small sample size. From here, the recommendations are for an expansion on this study conducted and a method for measurement that would limit subjectivity, possibly through a panel of teachers grading instead of just one. It would be beneficial for researchers to examine how self-regulation strategies impact writing achievement across varying grade levels and demographics, since this was conducted in a less diverse classroom with one grade level. On the next 2 slides, you can see the references listed here for this study that was conducted. Thank you all for listening.